Hello and welcome to Riverside Crafts. I'm Ray, one of the tutors, and today we're going to be looking at a stamp here, which is, oh, there we go, by Creative Expressions. It's one of their designer boutique stamps and it's called Giraffe Kisses. This is what I'm going to be doing. So, and there's the paper stock for what I'm doing, and here is my watercolour card. This is the watercolour card from Crafter's Companion, so it's quite nice to work with. Okay, so I'm going to put it in my stamp platform as normal. So I'm putting it in just like I would do normally. Do apologise for my cough. Here we go. Get the stamp out. Now it's a really large stamp. It's not a little one. It's quite large. It fills the whole of a A6 piece of cardstock, as you can see. There we go, totally fills it. So you've really got to be careful where you put your magnets, because you don't want the stuff coming over it. So that's going to go there. Right. And I'm going to be using Versifying Clair. This is a pigment ink, so that when I'm using my watercolour distress inks, it won't run. It stays, it's permanent once it's dry, so it won't go anywhere, which is what we're looking for. I'm going to give it a good tap over the stamp. Okay, and I'm going to go down. If it doesn't stamp the first time 100% nice and neat and black, then I think, you see how I've missed bits, and go back in again. The reason it's missing today is more to do with the heat, so the ink is drying quicker than what it would do normally. But using your stamp platform, you can go back again and again and again, and you won't end up with a blurred image. There we go. A little bit down here now on the flowers, just needs a bit more. Put a bit of ink there and do that. There we go, put it down. And that is why a stamp platform is a must when you're stamping. So I've gone over that 3 times to get myself a really nice picture. Couldn't have done it any other way. Need it to be a stamp platform to be able to do that, so that's quite a good thing to do. I'm just going to put that out of the way for a minute so I don't forget to clean the stamp before I put it away. Right, here we go, stamp. Now I have a tissue, and the tissue is there to take off the extra moisture on my brush so I don't get everything too wet. And here are my inks. Let me bring them in a minute so you can see. I've got peeled paint, wild honey, spiced marmalade, dried marigolds, Stormy Sky, dusty concord, and picked raspberry. Now these inks are quite new, so they're quite juicy, and the ones that are a bit older, I've just literally redone them all for getting it all sorted. So I'm just going to, first off, I'm going to start painting my leaves. So I'm just going to put the green in, and I'm just going to pick up and do the leaves quite quickly. The best bit about today is because everywhere is quite warm, it's going to dry quite quickly, so I shouldn't get so much bleeding in between one colour and the next, which will be a lot easier. But having said that, it will also mean that blending is going to be a bit more difficult. Now my brush is a size 4, so it's quite small, which is allowing me to get in the gaps here, because otherwise it's going to be, a bigger brush would be in the way. So I'm just going to put a little bit more water on my brush, and the brush is a bit dry again. Yep, that looks like it's all done. Right, I'm going to do my flowers, because I'm just going to, and they're mainly going to be purple, but I'm going to do one pink one this time, so I think it would just give it a nice variation on a theme. So I'm just going to put a light wash over first, nothing too heavy, just a nice light wash, and then I can go in with the same colour again and gradually darken it down so that it will all sort of look like it's got a bit more in it, if that makes sense. So I can just put another, you see how that just darkens it slightly by adding a little bit more of the colour in, just adding it where I want it and flicking it up so that it's sort of it's sitting on top of the other ink, and I can just blend it through a little bit. just going to thin brush a minute. I just want to blend those there so there's no obvious lines. So I'm just going to damp brush and give it a bit of a wiggle on it just to give it a nice finish. Okay, get some more purple down for me. Okay, I'm just going to do another one up here. There we go, that's that one done. Right, I'm going to do a pink one now. This one here is going to be pink. I'm just going to give it a bit of a wash over with some pink here. Cover. And now I'm going to go in and put some of the pink and build up the colour here where I need it to be in some areas, so it's a bit darker, a bit more vibrant even, just to give it a bit more of a colour. I'm looking for something. I'm just going to give my brush a bit of a, and get a little bit of water. I'm just going to give it a wiggle to help blend in. So I've got no lines anywhere particularly, so it's just giving them a bit of a move. So I'm not getting lines on it, and it's just blending a bit more from one colour to the next. Okay. Right, I'm going to put another purple one in now. As you probably notice, I turn my page, so I'm not trying to go over the top of where I'm working. I'm turning it so it works for my brush. So I'm not leaning on the page, I'm turning it so that I can get easily to where I want to be. So I'm not arguing with the paper. I'm trying to put my hand on it and paint over it, because that's when you smudge. Or it's when I smudge anyway. Right, so there we go. So that's the purple gone in for a moment. Just put a bit more down. And I'm just going to put some purple in, some darker purple bits in where I know it's going to be needed. And again, I'm just going to get a damp brush. I'm just going to blend in these bits that are all a little bit, I don't have any lines. There we go. So that's doing quite nicely now. Let that dry, and we're going to move on to the giraffe. Now I'm going to change my brush for a bigger brush because I've got a lot more space to be in. So I'm just going to change it up for a 6 and a second. Bigger brush. Here we go. Right. Now we're going to start off with the yellow, which is wild honey. Okay, right, so you'll notice I'm not putting the yellow down here yet or on the inside of the ears. That's because I'm going to actually use the marigold, dried marigold, because it's slightly pinker, it gives it a bit more of a fleshy tone feel, if that makes sense. So I'm just going to put that sort of in the areas where you sort of expect it to be. Now I'm just going to start putting some shading in. So I'm going to be using spiced marmalade, which will give me my darker colour for my giraffe. So it's going to give me my shadowing areas. Okay, which is so where you on a lot of stamps, it will actually give you an idea of where they're sort of expecting there to be changes in colour. They're expecting it to be darker because there's a lot more shading in that area. These sort of things tend to be shown on the stamps, so it's quite easy to work it out when you're looking at them, and you can sort of give it a bit of a poke round and have a play. Right, so now again I'm going to go with my damp brush, and I'm just going to wiggle so that there's no obvious line, so that it blends from one colour into the next. Okay, so I'm just wiggling and blending at the minute, as you can see, and that helps my colour. Okay, and again I'm just going to build in a bit more of the darker sort of orangey tone just under his neck to give it a bit more shade. I'm just going to put a little bit down here by these little flowers because they would be darker and there'd be shadow there, so I'm just going to do that quickly. Right, and I'm just going to pick up my smaller brush again because there's a couple of bits I want a little bit more detail in, so I'm just going to add a bit more of my yellow. There's a few areas where I just want it to be a bit more intense, so I'm just going to add in some more yellow, but I want it to be specific areas, so I'm just going to wiggle it in and bring it round, and like around his eye I want a bit more control over what I'm doing, so I'm just adding it in. Okay, giving it a good wiggle. That's looking quite good actually. Right, now I'm just going to add a little tiny bit of aged mahogany. I want a little bit more pink on the edges of where, whoops, I'm having one of those afternoons rather, where you think you're being tidy and organised and you forget things. So a little bit of aged mahogany. Now, you really is a tiny bit, you don't want a lot. And that's just to go here around the lip area, just to bring in a bit of pink. Make him look a bit more, and a little tiny bit on the inside of his ears. It just helps. There we go, that's better. And again, I'm just going to bring the yellow and the marigold in and give it a good old wiggle, so it doesn't sort of suddenly give you this strange feeling. So that's my giraffe done. I'm not really going to do much more to him because I'm quite happy with how he's looking. So I think that's quite nice really. We'll just leave it as it is. Alright. So here we go. Now I'm just going to do my butterflies. Now butterflies I'm going to do pink, but I'm going to drop the colour on. Okay, and then I'm going to go with and pull it out with water. So I'm going to make most of my butterfly wet. Okay, so this is called a wet into wet technique, where you actually sort of just drop the colour in and let it bleed, and it looks quite more natural than a butterfly. So. And you can pick up some of the other colours and drop that in as well, so it sort of blends it around a bit, which is quite nice. Okay, so that's one done. So that's my butterflies done for the moment. Now, on my background, to make it look a little bit more, rather than just sort of disappear, I've got a blue in the background. Can you see? It's very pale, but if I put them next to each other, you'll probably be able to see the blue. Yeah, you can just see there's a faint change in colour. This is one of the difficulties with doing it on live. You can't always see the colour change. There you go, there you can. Alright, so that's the white and that's got that slight blue tinge. So I'm just going to do that in now. A bit of blue just to go around. And the blue I'm using is Stormy Sky. Okay, now I'm watering it down quite a lot. I'm not using a strong tone, so it's watered down a lot. It's literally just going to be edged in around everything,